very good evening to all of you. Today, we are going to discuss about an interesting session. Intriguing and interesting. Quantum and consciousness. In today's session, we want to dig out the fundamental roots of our understanding of this world. We want to dig out the fundamental roots of how we relate with things. Is matter, spirit, disjoint sets, or they relate with each other? What are the underlying factors which can help us to perceive, to relate, and to utilize matter and spirit towards a meaningful cause? That and if matter is one dimension, spirit is another dimension, where does the Supreme Spirit permeate? That and much more will be the focus of our discussion today. There is uncertainty which governs everything in this world. Now, when we try to see the subatomic particles, we can see one of the first understanding we get about them is that yes, there is a lot of uncertainty about them. That's our basic understanding about the subatomic particles. There is uncertainty. You cannot determine the position, you cannot determine the energy. Simultaneously, there is uncertainty about the whole thing. There is haziness, it's not very clear. But we can see actually, uncertainty does not only prevail in subatomic region when we try to study matter. Uncertainty prevails in our day-to-day lives as well. Uncertainty prevails in behavior patterns as well. There is uncertainty which governs everything. So today's session we are going to probe on an interesting and intriguing dimension of reality. How to probe deeper from the realm of superficialities into the of depths of reality. Does matter and spirit are two completely different, completely non-intersecting, completely diverging paradigms, or is there an intersection between them? How one relates to the other? When we talk about matter, when we talk about consciousness, what is the role of superconsciousness within? How does our understanding through the eyes or through experimental eyes, whichever science offers us, how does our understanding through the eyes of the Vedic scriptures affect our day-to-day life? So how everything fits in is what we are going to explore in this session, and how everything refines, how a spiritual vision refines manipulation of matter, and how super consciousness refines the spiritual vision. That and much more we will discuss today. There is uncertainty which governs everything in this world. We see our lives are uncertain, Just like in the beginning of our seminar, our sound system settings became uncertain. Our sound system settings became uncertain. So we see that there is uncertainty which prevails anything and everything. The same behavior may lead to a different response with the same person every time. The same techniques may not work out for us. We see for ourselves. Suppose the one time the idea of going out may be exciting to us. Another time the same idea of going out, say to a beach, may not be exciting. One time the idea of a delicacy may be exciting, another time it may not be exciting. There is uncertainty which prevails. So we see similarly in relationships there is uncertainty. Many times people behave with us in different ways, unexpected ways. Sometimes we might have observed in relationships that we deal with someone and we feel that okay, we know the person should be very grateful and very positive because I stretched for him, I tried to help him, but the person may revert back in a completely wrong sense with a completely misunderstood perception. So there is uncertainty. One day people may behave with us as if they are the best of our friends. Another day the same person who had been supporting, another day the same person who has been supporting us may be offering us impedance, resistance. So just like there is uncertainty in behavior, sometimes maybe we may be looking forward to a particular kind of a day and we may be waiting for a long time for that day to come. Suppose it is a picnic day, that's a day of an excursion. But on that very day, one's mood may be completely gone. For no, sometimes for no obvious reasons. Sometimes there is this experience that one is prepared very nicely for the exam, but just before the examination, on the spur of the on the 11th hour, one is not feeling that enthusiasm, the tempo. Although his preparation is very good, but his attitude is little having a setback. So our moods swing, and uh, much to our surprise. Similarly, people's mood swings, and that is much to our shock. So there is uncertainty. Just like there is uncertainty in behavior, in a similar way, there is uncertainty in matter also. Just like there is uncertainty in behavior, there is uncertainty in matter also. And we can see this in quantum mechanics. The small particles, there is uncertainty. So, the uncertainty principle, you cannot determine the position, the energy of the subatomic particle, the quantum particle at the same time. So we will see the nature of this world is inside out. What is, or the nature of reality is inside out. Yeah. What is inside many times reflects outside. So therefore, studying inside, studying outside or never should be done in isolation. Everything should be done in relationship with each other, because the world stands one as a whole. One step stands. The world stands one as a whole. So we can understand this way. There is uncertainty. And therefore, we need to explore things from a deeper perspective. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us that the world is a mirror of one's consciousness. So what one feels in the heart The world starts appearing to be like that. Now comes the point, the very interesting point. The point is that when there are problems, when there is negativity in life, then this negativity and problem can be sorted out. Now, from a naive perspective, from a materialistic perspective, from a hedonistic perspective, the solution appears to be changing the world settings. People have to change, the settings have to change, the rules have to change, principles have to change, everything has to change. The Bhagavad teaches us that if we change the settings of our heart, everything will change. So nothing in this world is in isolation. Nothing is in isolation. Everything is connected to each other. Rather, what is inside very much drives the outside. Therefore, a person who is content and satisfied in life, a person whose mind and senses are controlled, such a person can find meaning in any given situation. Whereas a person whose mind and senses are not controlled, a person who has no understanding of the deeper concepts of life, a person who has no understanding of spirit, of God, such a person will not be able to make sense, or such a person will be disturbed even in a positive and favorable situation. So disturbance is not an external phenomenon. External may be a manifestation. External may be a trigger sometimes, a provocation. But it is the internal, the root, the state of the heart which drives the external. It is the state of the heart which drives the external. So that's why the first point to understand is that there is, the world is not objective. We cannot put the whole world into an equation and say, okay, happiness means this is the equation. That okay, So therefore, we see that because the world doesn't exist in a state of objectiveness or in an objective state, therefore, no amount of objective gathering can lead to. So therefore, so no amount of objective items, a gathering of objective items can lead to a state of meaning, fulfillment, happiness. We can see this. People are driving behind material objects, say bank balance, opulences, luxuries, comforts, name, fame. So they want to gather all these things objectively. Okay, my bank balance is this much. I have a property worth this much. My car is this much. I have these many luxury items in my. I have this much fan following. This is my social media fan following. So this drive for quantification, although everybody is chasing after it, but then the one subjective observation which we can see is that whether one is a winner, whether one is a loser, everyone is dissatisfied and empty in his life. So this goes to show that the world is not in an objective state. There is subjectivity. The subjectivity comes from the state of our consciousness. The subjectivity is coming from the state of our consciousness. What is our heart? How is our heart? The state of our heart determines how do we perceive things. So there is subjectivity. There is subjectivity. I have seen sometimes you give a same seminar to one class of audience or to the same type of audience in 1 year, they appreciate a lot. The next year, the same kind of audience, they don't appreciate. They say, okay, whatever is okay. It's not much, not much substance in it. I have seen sometimes, if you explain by giving different real life examples to people, then they get convinced, they feel happy. Okay, you give examples from doctors, engineers, lawyers, businessman. Another person will say, "अरे इतना example दे रहा है पका रहा है." This is subjectivity. What is our internal state matters the most. And when we talk about subjectivity, we are talking about perception. How do we perceive the things? So that means reality is different from perception of reality. If we have an improper perception of reality, then our experience is going to be much different. So quantum mechanics gives an interesting purview to reality. So many scientists talk about that, yes, quantum mechanics, is so the entire formulation of quantum mechanics, the science of quantum mechanics, or the theory of quantum mechanics, is about an explanation or an observance of something mystical which is happening in the subatomic world. Something magical and mystical, inexplicable, which is happening in this subatomic world. But then scientists and Nobel laureates acknowledge that we know that the subatomic particles behave in a very mystical and a mysterious way. We know that they behave in a mysterious way, but we don't know why they behave so. So in fact, one of the Nobel laureates in quantum electrodynamics, Richard Feynman, he made an interesting observation. He said that if you think that you know what is quantum mechanics, then you don't know it at all. That is quantum mechanics. Then he says, okay, this is the world of quantum mechanics. So therefore Max Born says that yes, the theory is more intelligent than us. It knows why it works. So we are not able to tell why it is working, but we are only able to tell that there is mysticism which is existing. There is, it is enigmatic, it is mystical. These small subatomic particles behave in a mystical way, which we can only observe, and we can clap seeing that. And what the modern day quantum science research is doing is that, and we can just clap and tap. So they understand that this phenomena happens. Nobody understands why it happens, but because they know it happens, we have made a gadget out of it, and we are utilizing it in an industry perspective. So we only know how to clap and tap. Yeah, Max Planck, 1935. Yes. So quantum mechanics, the physics has gone beyond the grasp of its creators. So what is this mystery all about? Before we go into an understanding of the mystery of these, how these small quantum particles behave, before we go into their mystical, amazing behavior, and then try to understand and draw lessons from that, let's talk about let's talk a little bit about the paradigms. How do you approach a problem? So now, given a problem, we can approach a problem through common sense. Science approaches the problem in a particular way, in a particular methodology. That methodology is called as scientific realism. Scientific realism. So first of all, observation, in what way the observation is perceived, is very important to our experience. So now, like say for example in this slide, what you're seeing here is a table. It's a brown table. Is it not? Now if somebody asks you a question, okay, what is this? What is the reality? So okay, reality is a brown table. Is it not? Now this is common sense. It's a table, brown table. You can do your work on the table, you can work on a laptop, you put your head down, go to sleep on the table. It's a table. Now, how does uh, a scientific reality perceive it? Science says, no, it's not just a table. So scientific realism is a particular kind of methodology of looking at reality. So if you follow the scientific way of looking at things, then you will say, okay, it's not a table. It's a set of atoms which are vibrating about their mean positions. It's a set of atoms. They they are following a constrained vibrational behavior. It is not non-constrained. You can put equations of constraint. It's a constraint behavior. That's reality. That's what it is. So now, in one sense, we may say that yes, when we approach something scientifically, that we have broken down a thing. So we have broken down a thing into its small constituents. Is it not? It's such a big table. We have broken it down into atoms. And we are talking about a big object in terms of its atomic. So we have dissected it. This is called as a reductionist approach. But now, what is the experience at the face value of this approach? That's what we want to talk about. So now, okay, it's a table. We may say, okay, you can say it's a brown table. You can say it's atom vibrating, like that. But suppose now let us take another example. Say, for example, gulab jamun. So, uh, so it doesn't require a PhD degree to be able to explain what a gulab jamun is. A 3-year-old child can also explain. If you say gulab jamun, he may say, okay, very nice, I want it. Gulab jamun is something what I want. It is something which is very nice, very delicious. So, now if you apply scientific realism, that okay, from a scientific perspective, what is the reality of the gulab jamun? Then those roadways will take you to understand that okay, gulab jamun means there are some 100 micron globules. These 100 micron globules are coalesced clusters, and these coalesced clusters are suspended in a highly viscous fluid, and these globules are showing different shades of color patterns, from brown to white. And you can give values of viscosity, and you can give values of the diameter, the average diameter of these coalesced globules, or the aggregates of these globules and all that. Now, the question is, how much does the explanation, and we may think that okay, we have done an engineer's job, and one can publish a paper on it. These 100 micron globules, which are suspended in a colloidal state, and how they relate with the viscosity, and how they relate with each other, and so on and so on and so forth. And we can give a full mathematical analysis, but that mathematical analysis misses out on a very important detail, and that very important detail is that this description doesn't tell anything about the experience of a gulab jamun. The essence of the gulab jamun is its taste, and in this case, this approach of mathematically formulating it has completely spoiled this the essence of the gulab jamun. In fact, if you hear the explanation of the gulab jamun in terms of size and viscosity and fluid dynamics and the surface the surface forces and the surface tension and the van der Waals forces, the forces of attraction, the forces of repulsion, and Brownian motion. I mean, it's going to give a very dreary view of what is a gulab jamun. So you don't need a mathematical formulation for it. We don't need a dissection of it. When we are dissecting, we are actually missing out on its essence. And what we remain with is something which is very dreary. All we need is all we need is all what we need is to eat 2-3 of them. That's what we need when it comes to gulab jamun. So this goes to show that many times it is, it's not, when we say something as reality is a very subjective concept. And if we simply apply a certain tool to understand reality, we have to understand that that tool is not absolute. And therefore that tool or formation may miss out a very integral part of what is reality. And therefore may give us a completely different picture. That way. So now may give us a completely different picture. So this goes to show that the modern day scientific approach of reductionism, reducing everything into its so small constituent parts, completely misses on a very important dimension. Completely misses on to a very important dimension. The experience is gone. Where is the experience in that? Is it not? Just like we may say nature. Now, so many people, they have a habit of, so many people feel so much excited about interfacing nature, the greenery, the mountains, the iconic beaches. Now one may say, when we want to capture it in the camera, we want to capture it in social media profiles, when we want to capture it in hard. But we are not interfacing reality in terms of an atomic scale. What are the atoms and molecules and how they relate with each other? Imagine. Just imagine that suppose if we had, some microscopic vision, how will the world appear to us to be? Very ghastly, very horrible, is it? So that means, the scale is very important, right? So just imagine, if our eyes had a microscopic vision or a telescopic vision, say for example, the world would be very ghastly for us. But because it is an optimum scale, there is a certain amount of zooming, there is a certain amount of positioning which is there. Therefore, we are able to relate the beauty of this world in a particular pattern. So now, the question is that okay, at whatever scale of positioning and zooming our eyes are on, the question is to think about, to ponder over is that is this world beautiful? The beauty what we see in this world, is it there or not there? Because if you change the zooming, if you change the positioning, then it doesn't appear to be the same, is it not? If you zoom in to a microscopic level, then the beautiful object is no more beautiful. It's something different now. So therefore, we can understand that yes, many times, simply reducing things, a reductionist approach will not work out. A better alternative is to have a holistic approach. To have a holistic approach towards the understanding of everything. So in that sense, we can understand that science completely plays around in effects. But again, effect is not the full approach because it is not holistic. Because effect doesn't exist without a cause. And unless you understand the cause, you cannot, unless you understand the cause, then the, to work out the effect is not a problem. It's not going to work out, is it not? So that's why we need a deeper vision. We need a more holistic vision. We need a vision which is inside out, which is outside in, inside out, outside in, like that. This is exactly what the Vedic Shastras are giving us. When they explain that the Lord is within, the Lord is without, the state of the heart very much correlates with the state of the world. This is what it means, that we are trying to interface now reality in a very holistic perspective. Okay. So this is an interesting experiment in physics about Newton's. This is about the double slit experiment. So there is this scientific observation that when a high intensity source of light falls, passes through, two particular here. These two particular slits are explained. So when the light passes through these slits, then what we see is in physics it's called as an interference pattern, because and uh, what we see is an interference pattern. And we can see, yes, interference pattern means that at some places the light waves, because it's a wave, it's a sinusoid, so some places they cancel each other, then it's a dark band. Some places it adds on to each other, because it's a wave, it's a sine wave. So where it adds on, where it is in phase, then it gives a good intensity output. When it doesn't add on, it gives a dark band. That's what we can see in the figure here. We can see in the figure here actually that there is the light band. So there are these bands, there are these shades which we can see. There are these shades which we can see here. It's light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. Now, the interesting phenomena happens here. So interference pattern you can explain from a classical perspective. Okay, there is wave, and you can express the wave in the form of a sine function in a mathematical sense, and then you can say its phase is changing, so it adds somewhere, it collapses somewhere. You can explain it from the classical perspective. Interesting thing happens here when there is a low intensity source of light. Then you don't see these bands. So low intensity source of light, you don't see these bands. What you are seeing is random dots, and they appear to be everywhere. So now the question comes is that what has happened? These low intensity bands, they appear to be everywhere. And now the next point to note is that so now the interesting question which comes here is that what is the relationship between the spots which we see in a low intensity source of light and the interference pattern, which is like bands, the lit bands, the dark band, the lighted band, the dark band. What is the relationship between them? Is there any relationship, or is it part and whole, but they don't seem to be related? The interesting thing is that if you have a low intensity light for a very long period of time, then by long exposure what happens is that the random dots, they start forming an interference pattern, as what we can see here. So you can see here these bands, they are forming an interference pattern. So now so this, what we can say is, from scientific perspective, this is said to be, that okay, in one case, short periods of time is behaving in a quantum sense, long periods of time behaving in a classical sense. Now this is a very interesting case where all our understanding and concepts start faltering. So one of the slits is closed. When one of the slits is closed, you can see that the particle, when one of the slits is closed, then you can see that the particle is landing everywhere. So this particular graph is showing, that is showing where all the particle lands. So that means that this small light particle, it lands everywhere. And one of the slits is closed, it lands everywhere. When both the slits are open, so one of the two slits is open and the dots appear everywhere. So how it can appear? So now there is a very interesting question: how the electron proton appears everywhere? The interesting part is this: when both the slits are open, there is an interference pattern. At some places there is no photon. At some places there is photon. It's an interference pattern. But some places, but when one of the slit is closed, the photon is everywhere. Or if you are passing electrons, then electrons are everywhere. So that means what? That when both the slits are open, a given subatomic particle will land in a different position. So when both the slits are open, the particle lands at P dash. And when only one slit is open, the particle understands the same particle lands at P. So this is a very interesting question. That how does this particle know whether both the slits are open or only one slit is open? So based on that, it is deciding where it will land, or based on that, it is deciding its trajectory. Yeah. So this is the third surprise. A quantum particle which is going through one slit will arrive at P or P dash depending on whether the other slit is open or not. So how does it understand without that the other slit is open or not? This is quantum mechanics. Very interesting. That means in its very outset, this the understanding of or the probes on quantum mechanics are talking about that this small particle is behaving in different ways. If two slits are open, the particle chooses to go in a different direction, and if only one slit is open, the particle chooses to go in a different direction, as if the particle is having a person sitting inside here, and the particle is choosing where to go, where not to go. So, in this way, quantum mechanics brings us to and and from the formulations of quantum mechanics, they just cannot understand it. They can only wonder at it like that. This is how subatomic particles behave. But actually, from Shastric point of view, we can understand this. Why? Because you see, the point is that the electron. See, the electron is not having any life. So matter doesn't have life. It's not that okay, electron also has life. Electron or matter doesn't have life. But the point is that just because it doesn't have life, it's not impersonal. The world may be lifeless because matter may be lifeless. The universe may be life is spirit, but then matter doesn't have life. But just because it doesn't have life, that doesn't mean it's impersonal. Everything in this world is personal. Why? Because there is a personal hand behind it. So we understand, okay, matter doesn't have life, but it is life which moves matter. So the Vedic Shastras explain, Andantarastha Paraman Chayantarastha. The Supreme Lord is present everywhere. Lord's greatness is two-sided. The Lord is greater than the greatest. The Lord is smaller than the smallest also. So therefore, the Supreme Lord is explained in terms of the vast expanse of the universe, and then it is said that okay, this whole universe, this planetary system is like the body of the Lord. Is so huge. But then the Shastras also explain that the Lord is within every atom. The Lord is within the space between the atom also. So Lord's greatness is both-sided, greater than the greatest, smaller than the smallest. So that means that the Lord's hand is present everywhere. And just because that personal hand is present, the superconsciousness, stamp of the superconsciousness, the hand of the superconsciousness is present even on the atomic level. Even the atomic level does not behave in an impersonal way. It behaves in a personal way, which means that according to the situation, the behavior changes. The Shastras explain that. The Vedic Shastras do explain that. So nothing is impersonal in this world. Even quantum particles are not impersonal. But matter behaving in a personal way, that means that the matter behaving in a personal way, that means that this matter is being used as a means to express love, to develop relationship. It's just like, say for example, suppose one gets up in the morning on his birthday, and one sees that as soon as one gets up, one sees a very big gift bag, a lot of chocolates in it. So now we may say, okay, the gift bag may be immediately, and there are flowers, the bouquet of flowers, there's a box of chocolates. Now, there are a bouquet of flowers, a box of chocolate. It's all matter actually. It's all organic, matter. But the point is that, and one comes, one takes bath, comes to the dining table, he sees his favorite, puri halwa sabji, puri halwa sabji, his favorite. So now the point is that from a material perspective, it's all matter. Halwa is matter. Chocolate is matter. But because that matter, but the very positioning and placement of it in our life, so that matter is not moving on its own. The presence of that matter indicates a personal hand behind who loves us. So it may be the mother, it may be one's sister, brother. So the presence of the chocolate means, denotes the love of the person behind who has maneuvered it to be present there for us to experience. So the experience of the chocolate is a way in which one can experience the love of the person behind the chocolate. Otherwise, the chocolate is not much meaningful, is it not? In 10 rupees we can purchase a chocolate, 20 rupees we can purchase a chocolate. So that's the point. Halwa is not much meaningful. It takes 20 minutes to make halwa. No? I mean, a basic halwa you can make in 20 minutes. Halwa is not much meaningful. But then the presence of the halwa on the day of the birthday has a lot of meaning. Because it's a personal hand behind. So in this way we can so now here the Vedic Shastras are talking about that yes, therefore it's like this. When we see that even these subatomic particles are not behaving in an impersonal way, they are behaving in a personalized way, we have to understand that this whole world is personal. There is the Supreme Lord, God behind actually. And therefore actually everything in this world we should understand that we should start relating with it in terms of our relationship with God. So therefore Vedic Shastras are talking about that you don't see this world from a microscopic or macroscopic or telescopic perspective or a classical or a quantum or relativistic perspective, but see it from the perspective of relationship with the Supreme Lord. Then everything starts becoming very meaningful and sublime. So that's where we see that there is divinity behind this universe. And when we access that divinity, then we can actually fluff and play with that love and warmth which our heart is always hankering for. Okay, so let's go ahead and quantum mechanics. So okay, now the modern day, and how now from a quantum mechanics perspective, let's say, how do we measure an electron? Say for example, it's very difficult to understand an electron. It's very difficult to measure an electron. So electron can be measured in terms of its properties. So okay, mathematically we can formulate that a property, so say one property can be color of an electron. This is just a simple example we are giving. So then we can make an instrument which measures color. Color is black white. So as you can see in the figure here, you pass an electron. If it is white, it comes out from the white end. If it is black, it will come out from the black end. Similarly, another property can be hardness and softness. So if the electron is a soft electron, it comes out straight. If the electron is a hard electron, it goes up. So hard goes this way, soft goes this way. So this way we have defined two properties of an electron. This is just how, this is so suppose there are these two properties we have defined and we have made two tools or two filters. You put a electron, if it is white it comes this way, that way, it's color and hardness. Now let's play with it. So here it's showing that okay, from down you are giving an input, you are inputting an electron. So from the first, so if you input say many electrons actually, so those who are white will come out this way. Those who are white will go this way, and those who are black will go up, right? So from the first color filter, 50% of the electrons will come out as white. They will go horizontal, and 50% of electrons will come out black, they will go up, right? So now we have put a second color filter. So when you put a second color filter, black electron remains a black electron, it goes up. So therefore at the very top we have 100% output. But whereas in the second filter there is no electron which will come out white, or no subatomic particle which will come out white. So this experiment shows that okay, there is this repeatability of color. This happens in quantum mechanics. Repeatability. So we have given a property that we have made a filter, right? We have given a property, we have made a filter, that filter is repeatable. Anytime you measure, black will be black, white will be white. Okay? So this is the science we have developed till now. Okay. So now we are playing with hardness filter and color filter. So we give an input from below. 50% of the electrons will be hard and 50% will be soft. See, this is where probability is coming. Because electron can be anything. It can be hard also, soft also. So half of them will be hard, half of them will be soft. Probability theory. So 50% will go up. Now the second filter is color filter. So it's so the question being asked is that okay, of all the hard electrons, how many will be white and how many will be black? So the output which is seen and what is logical also, hardness should have nothing to give and take with color. So 50% of them should be black, 50% of them should be white, which is what we can see in the result. So this logic and the experiment come together, good understanding. The understanding is what? Color is color, hardness is hardness. There is no correlation between the two. By hardness बोला है तो hard can be any color, and any color can be hard or soft. So black electrons can be hard also, soft also. There is no correlation between the two. So much, so good. So this way, ये logical है. This is logical, and this is what is experimentally found also, right? So this is logical, and we have found this experimentally also. Now, so now this is the experiment. So there are three filters we have put. So the electron is coming. First, it is going through the color filter. Then it is going to the hardness filter, and then it is going through the color filter again. तो बोलेंगे ठीक है, ये तो बहुत common sense है, simple है ये. Is it not? The logic says what? That first of all you have put an input, 50% black आएंगे, 50% white आएंगे. The black ones go up, so the black ones are entering the hardness filter. Black ones, so black electrons, 50% will be hard, 50% will be soft. Right? So now you may say ठीक है, तो अब second filter के बाद we have black electrons which are hard, is it not? और फिर से color filter लगाया तो all should pass vertically, है कि नहीं? सभी black होने चाहिए. White end से कुछ बाहर नहीं आना चाहिए, is it not? Logically this is what we may presume. Logically this is what we may presume, is it not? That okay, color. So we know okay, color and hardness have nothing to give and take with each other. They don't have any correlation. But then okay, so color filter, hardness filter, color filter, is it not? So we have measured color again. So logically, at the very top we should get 100% black electrons and nothing should come out as white from the third filter. But experimentally it is observed that 50% of the electrons come out black and 50% of the electrons come out white. You may say ये क्या हो गया? 50% black आ गए, 50% white आ गए. So this is interesting. So this is a very interesting phenomenon which is observed. कि ये तो so that means what? That means that so this is an interesting observation which has been observed. There's no explanation actually, but this is the observation. Very interesting. That means what? That the hardness filter changed the color. That means after the hard electrons actually so it's as if the hardness filter has tampered with the color actually, or you can say the electrons chose to rearrange their color, because the first time they were measured color. So if you only keep measuring color, that's all fine, but then but then you measure another property, that is hardness, and then again you want to measure color, then the electron chooses to be different. Just ठीक है, अभी मैं white हूँ, पहले मैं black था. So the electron changes party here actually. So this is interesting. This is interesting. So this shows that in one sense we cannot measure. So this goes to show that that we cannot measure hardness and color together actually. we cannot measure hardness and color together. We cannot measure hardness and color together. So okay, let's go to another experiment. Okay, let's see this one. Yeah. So now what? Okay, so we are taking. So let's make 2 units of this. So here we understand. So let's make 2 units of this. That means uh, we are let's make 2 units of this and combine them. Okay. So we make 2 units of this and combine them. So now we are seeing that uh, we make 2 units of this and we combine them and then see what happens. Then see what happens. Okay. So the meaning of hardness and color are two properties which we have described just to explain the context. So I am not going into the technicalities of the quantum mechanical property. This is a hypothetical property which we have defined. So we are saying that let's try to understand if one property is color, one property is hardness. Then how do you explain the two? How do you explain the two? So yes, physically there is a nomenclature to these properties, but I am not going into that. So as to exclude the complexity of it and just understand to get a feeling of how these particles behave, how these particles behave, how these particles behave. So let's say now we have these. Now we make 2 units of this. We have say black electrons which are coming out. Now black electrons are coming out so we say let's say this that then let's say we replicate this experiment. We take out black electrons we pass through a hardness filter. So 50% of them will be hard, 50% of them will be soft. Now let's say that these so now these hard and soft electrons like that, and hard electrons, soft electrons. Okay, so let's so both of them are going. So by putting some mirrors, let us combine both of them. Okay, so the hardness filter, the hard electrons, the soft electrons are here. Here are the soft electrons, here are the hard electrons. We combine both of them. When we combine both of them and then put the color filter, we will see that all electrons are still black. We combine both of them. Now, the interesting observation is this. Let's directly go to this. So that's what we were saying, that we combine hard and soft. When we combine and take the output, we will see that if we pass black electrons, then the output will be black when we do a color filter. So we combine and then put a color filter, we will have the output black. But suppose we block one of the pathways. Okay, we block one of the pathways. That means the soft particle path we block. So when we block one of the pathways and then as input we are giving a black electron and at the output we have put a color filter. Now, and then what is going to happen is that it's not going to be 100% black output. It will be 50% black, 50% white. That means this is really mind-boggling, because this shows, or this gives an indication that these small quantum particle, the particle which is going up, which is a hard electron, how this particle gets some sense that the soft passage is blocked. So therefore, some of them change their property from black to white. So you get a 50% black, 50% white, like that. Whereas if hard and soft both pathways were open and the electrons combined, and then we measured color, the black initially remained black. But when one of the path is blocked, the electrons, the black electrons passing through the hardness filter, and then combining, some of them choose to change their color property and they become white. So this is a mind-boggling property. But what the sense of, the feel, what we want to give is that. So yes, there was this question that what does this hardness and color refer to? Actually, the hardness and color refers to the spin properties. The spin, yeah. So the spin, magnetic vector in y direction and z direction. That's exactly what is color and hardness. It's one direction, the other direction, and they are not correlated with each other. That means they are completely disjoint. So that's what it means technically, but we obscured the technicalities just to give a feel. So the underlying feel is that these subatomic particles are behaving in a very personal sense. The sense is the question here is understand how does the small particle knows? Yes, the small particle does not know, but the super consciousness in which the small particle is behaving knows everything, and therefore there is this change of behavior which is completely inexplicable. Inexplicable. So therefore many scientists are beginning to think that actually that the language of quantum mechanics is perhaps the language of relationships. And so the language of quantum mechanics may be the language of relationships. So how the surroundings relate with the situation and the situation relate with the state is the language of relationships. And maybe this is how we may be doing science. And that's why you can see that now, as so many scientists are thinking about this, the Vedas are already speaking about this. And yes, because there is God, the God stamp and presence is there in anything and everything in this world. Actually, therefore, to relate with anything in this world without accepting God or without relating it with God is a very incomplete dimension. Actually, is an incomplete dimension. So there is super consciousness. So that means that matter and spirit both start making sense when we bring in the super consciousness, which is the underlying factor which is the underlying root and fundamental behind the two. Now let's talk a little bit about the principle of superposition. So in quantum mechanics, a very interesting principle is the principle of superposition, actually. So now superposition is a very interesting principle, actually. So the principle of superposition says that actually a particle in one particular situation. So we saw examples. A particle in one particular situation, it gives a different output on measurement. Another situation, it gives a different output. So the theory in which it is explained is like this. I mean, it's called as superposition. That means it says that okay, the particle is not exactly in a state. But when you ask the particle to show something, the particle chooses to come in some state, which is what we were seeing actually before. So the particle chooses to come in a particular state. So this is superposition. So it's like saying that okay. So suppose in layman's terms, if you want to give an example of superposition, it's like this. You can say that. So that means that intrinsically, electrons which were showing up as black and electrons which were showing up as white, both are the same. But some of them choose to show as white, some of them choose to show as black. And under the situation, the electron which in situation one who chose the electron which chose to be as white, in another situation it chooses to be black. This is superposition. So that means that the electron is not in one state or the other. There is no objectivity. It is very subjective. But when you question कि भाई एक बता दो ये हो या ये हो, then it says okay आज मैं black हूँ, or other time it says okay आज मैं white हूँ, like that. This is called a superposition, and we understand okay this is personalism. Is it not? This is exactly what is personalism. Is it not? So from the formulation perspective, So even quantum physicists or quantum mathematicians, they have figured it out that actually, the matrix of superposition, is not into objective state. You cannot objectify a state. ये black ही है, इतना percent black है, इतना white है. You cannot specify that. Rather, what is said is that mathematically, they say, okay, the measurement which is used, the measuring tool. So please mark this carefully because this is very interesting. This is the quantum physicist's observation, but this is a very important lesson. What we can learn from this also. So they say that it's quite interesting. They say that okay, that the tool which you use to measure, your tool is objective. So by your tool, you are forcing the quantum particle to say that okay, तुम ये हो या ये हो, एक चीज बताना. हाँ? So that means what kind of tool you put in, the observation is going to be like that accordingly. तो उसमें से हाँ ये तो पर्सनलिज्म है कि आप कैसे बिहेव करेंगे, आप उसी तरह से रिस्पॉन्ड करेंगे. तो behavior also happens, is it not? So suppose so what kind of tool you use in, or what kind of measurement you use in, I mean this situation will ignite the behavior, is it not? Like say suppose if somebody talks to me very nicely, somebody says somebody glorifies me, talks to me nicely, I will feel good about it. So it will so that tool may help me in bringing out a good response. So the tool may help me in bringing about a good response, is it not? But if somebody speaks in a provocative, insulting manner on the first go, so suppose if somebody comes and requests, okay, can you extend for me? I mean, think about extending. If he is, polite, humble, genuine, so it will provoke me to behave, in to choose to extend. But if somebody is speaking in a very, challenging way, insulting way, he says, okay, you've got to do this, then that may not excite a good behavior out of me, is it not? So it's a measurement operator. We can see in behavior actually. So therefore, in this, we can see this in behavior. No person is a good person, bad person. Good and bad is objectivity in one sense actually. So it is what setting is being used. If the person is dealt with nicely, his good side is brought about, is it not? If a person is dealt with in an exploitative sense, his ugly side is brought out, is it not? So that's the point. That is the point. So this is basically, in a very layman's terms, the mind's matrix also behave in that same way. The mind's matrix also behave in the same way. So it is a tool, it is the operator which is used actually. And we can understand, so in life that tool is our motivation, our attitude with which we interface reality. If that attitude is good, it brings about good realities. So therefore the Vedic Shastras are talking about, okay, no person is eternally a bad person. When you see a person in relation as a part and parcel of God, and when you try to help that person as a part and parcel of God, help him to connect to the divine, then that brings about the good in the person. But simply an exploitative perspective brings about the bad in the person. So this is the point. So quantum physicists also talk about that in this way, the tool, the measurement operator which is used is like pinpricking the quantum particle to say either you go here or you go there. But reality is not this here and there actually. The reality is deeper, like that. It is explained as superposition, but we see that the reality is not objective. The reality is subjective. The reality is very much dependent on the state of the situation. So in this way, Bhagavad Gita defines, or Bhagavad Gita describes that matter and spirit, both, when Bhagavad Gita describes about the three modes of material nature, goodness, passion and ignorance, that is the inherent characteristics of people, thought processes, actions and materials as well. That that which is in goodness uh, fluffs positivity, fluffs mature understanding. That which is in passion fluffs narrow-mindedness, fluffs aggressiveness, and that which is in ignorance fluffs madness, fluffs destructive behaviors. So, Bhagavad Gita explains that people are in goodness, passion, ignorance. Thoughts are in goodness, passion, ignorance. Actions are in goodness, passion, ignorance. But matter is also in goodness, passion, ignorance. There are foods and mode of goodness, foods and mode of passion, foods and mode of ignorance. So, there is this. So the state is being talked about. That this state is being talked about. Bhagavad Gita is talking about that. Okay, when you see matter from the purview of exploiting it, deriving sense enjoyment out of it, then that matter takes a toxic form, and that toxin will harm us. Therefore, no. So that's the point. But when we relate with matter or interface matter with the purview of, with the heart of making an offering to Krishna, making an offering for God, for humanity, then that same matter becomes non-toxic. And therefore, it doesn't overwhelm us, it doesn't blind us, it doesn't intoxicate us. So, toxic effects we can see. When one runs after a sense object, if he gets it, his greed is fueled. If he doesn't get it, his anger is fueled. In both cases, his lust is anyways fueled. That's a toxic effect. But the same matter, if one touches with a heart to offer it to God, then none of these lust, greed, anger are going to increase. So we can see that there is, so in this way, we can see that there is this deeper dimension, and therefore this world cannot be understood without accepting and acknowledging this deeper dimension of God. Okay, let's go further. Okay, so this appears to be a spider, but in reality, it's a drawing. So that means there is difference between reality and experience of reality. This difference is described in science also, and this difference is described in the Vedic Shastras also. In Bhagavad Gita also this is described, that actually the reality of this world is at two levels. There is phenomenal reality and there is nominal reality. Lord Krishna also talks about the phenomenal and the nominal in Bhagavad Gita. So what we experience is phenomenal, but the ontological state in which it exists, that is called as nominal. So that means that what we experience and how it appears to be is phenomenal, and what it actually is nominal. Just like the previous example, spider is a phenomenal reality, but the drawing is a nominal reality. So what it actually is nominal, and what it appears to be is phenomenal. So this is a nomenclature which scientists also use. This is a nomenclature which the Lord also explains. So in this way we are understanding that yes, unless we set right our heart, the world is not going to appear us in a proper way. The world is not going to appear us in a proper way. So we can see this. The Acharyas talk about this. The Acharyas explain when one wants to interface the world with an exploitative purview, the material energy appears very different. The person sees reality which is completely different. But when one wants to serve Krishna, serve God, serve humanity, then the world appears to be different. So in exploitative grounds, we will see everything becomes meaningless, empty, shallow, hollow, superficial, gross, not making any sense. Therefore, the modern day progression of society is like that only. People think that nothing makes sense, nothing is meaningful. Just do anything random, whatever you feel like. There's no meaning. There's all chaos. There's no meaning to anything. So people now the meaning and flavor now the respect of people to people at large is lost. The respect of relationships is lost. The sweetness and fragrance of relationships is lost. the culture is lost, everything is lost because the whole drive is exploitative, so everything appears to be meaningless. But when one is a devotee of the Lord, then even a seemingly negative situation may appear meaningful for a devotee. So this is what the Gita, the Vedic Shastras are talking about. So now, we are coming to an interesting observation. So here we see that quantum mechanics says that the reality of a particle. So the basic theory of uncertainty says that you can either measure position or you can measure momentum. You cannot measure both of them simultaneously. So this is where it says that so in this way. Now the question is why cannot we measure both of them simultaneously? So this goes to show that quantum mechanics is giving us a certain highlight, a pointer towards a certain depth which exists in reality. So that means what it's saying is that you cannot measure position, you cannot measure momentum at a particular both simultaneously. So basically why? Because position is an operator, momentum is an operator. When you are saying an operator, then you are forcing the particle to come in a certain track. If it comes in that track, the other fragrances, the essence of the other part is lost. So does it make sense? So it's like, so this is objectification. Objectification actually holds you, confines you, and when you are confined, it's like suppose a person becomes angry. Now, a person may be very intelligent, maybe very amicable, maybe very good to deal with, maybe very jovial, but in a given situation, if this anger is excited, now he's not able to think. He is only thinking, about, he's only burning, he's only thinking about, say, boxing back. So now his intelligence, his jovial nature, his deep thought process is now gone because all what is excited is his anger. The operator has excited his anger, and now he only wants to punch on the face back, or shout back, or battle back, retaliate back. So in this way, we can understand that this the incompleteness of quantum mechanics arises from this aspect, objectification. It's not about so therefore now you cannot just talk about because of this objectification. It's the simultaneous coexistence cannot happen because you want to ask about one objective, then you have actually confined the particle on that track, and then the particle may lose its essence like that. So this is what we can understand. Therefore, we need to accept subjectivity, and when we accept subjectivity, we need to accept the state of our heart. That actually. And we need to accept two things, that our heart is conditioned, but our heart is having a divine potential. So when we rectify the state of our heart internally, the external settings, any external interface or stimuli, so we can say any external interface or stimuli is like a measurement operator, we will be able to give a good value in return or a good output in return when the state of our heart, the subjective heart, is set right. So that's why it is imperative on the part of on the part of a seeker, on the part of a broad-minded person, to soak his heart with superconsciousness. Consciousness will only resonate with superconsciousness, and that resonance gives a very powerful pattern of how to interface matter in such a way that one doesn't get entangled or crushed by the material energy. Yeah. So this is again the same noumenal and phenomenal. Yeah. So now he is saying, let's take an example, a literary example to understand the same concepts which we were talking about before. So now we are talking about again noumenal and phenomenal. So phenomenal is what I experience, and noumenal is what many it actually is. Now, uh, now it's like this. Let's take a literary example. So my experience is a very holistic phenomenon. When I speak out that experience, words are limiting my feelings. When I write out that experience, the written script is limiting my experience. It describes some aspect of it, but it is not able to describe big, a whole big thing, the entire state of what I'm feeling. So, uh, so Naya of realism means explaining our experience in common language, in common understandable terms. Now we may see that now in what so the words they limit our experience. This is first thing what we can say, or this is first thing what we can see. See, I have this experience many times that sometimes you write a mail to a person. You may say and one feels that I have written a very good mail. There was a misunderstanding. Now I am resolving the things. We'll have a fresh start. It will set right everything, resolve everything. But then the mail has gone, and now after 3 days you understand that things have messed up more because you wrote something with a different thought, with a different intent behind. The person understood it in a different way. But now suppose instead of email, sending an email to resolve a conflict, say for example, if both of them come together, or both of them come together along with the third neutral person, and then talk and empathize, hear the other person's opinion, give out your opinion, think about it, don't jump to conclusions, and churn it in that way, then one can better resolve the things like that. So in this way, this example is showing that so this example exactly shows that what kind of approach we take to actually project, showcase our experience can better describe it. So personal presence, we may be able to better describe ourselves. A written script may not be able to in the best way represent ourselves that way. Similarly, we may see different languages, say for example. Now, English is having 26 alphabets like that. There is no alphabet in English which can describe, say for example, the sh in Hindi. How do you describe sh in English? How do you describe the re of rishi in English? There is no alphabet that describes it. So, now if you use English, that means the amount of expressibility gets limited. If you use Hindi, the amount of expressibility is a little bigger. But then now if you switch on to Sanskrit, which is the mother of all, the Indian languages, then one's expressibility power increases. So the expressibility power, and therefore the when the expressibility power increases, the matrix of experience also enhances like that. So therefore we may say that. So now how does this relate to our day-to-day lives? In our day-to-day lives also it is very much like this. So when the Lord explains these three modes, the goodness, passion, ignorance, if we use ignorance as the language of how we want to relate to this world, then the alphabet set is very much limited. And because it is very much limited, the experience is very miserable. Because you cannot speak what you want to speak. If a person understands something else, you speak something else, and it is. But the goodness, the language set of goodness is much more. The Satuguna, the mode of goodness, the language set is much more. And Satuguna raises on the platform of raises the consciousness of the living entity to relate, to reconciliate with material aspects, spiritual aspects, and more. So the basic paradigm where Bhagavad Gita, the Lord speaks about coming in Satoguna is by gaining knowledge about matter, knowledge about the spirit, that is the spirit soul, but in connection with the Supreme Spirit, that is God. So because all three dimensions are added, therefore the vocabulary has increased. Therefore the experience is going to be much more better actually. So in this way, we can understand that when we talk about subjectivity, then what is happening is a subjective reality, and when we see the world from a relationship, so the temporary becomes meaningful when temporary is seen in relationship to the permanent. Then even a temporary phase has meaning. So, just like, say, for example, going to a movie may be a titillation, but if one is going with a movie with a loved person or loved one, like that, then that movie may be a meaningful memory. The movie is not memorable, but the experience of being with a loved one, and through the medium of being in a movie may be an experience. So the temporary, when it is when the temporary is put on when the temporary is put as an offering to relate with the eternal, then the temporary becomes meaningful actually. This is what Srila Prahlad Maharaj explains in the 7th canto of Bhagavatam. That although this world is temporary, illusory, but it has meaning, especially when your vocabulary set increases actually. And that's what the transcendental knowledge or the Divya given in the Vedic Shastras can do to us. It offers us a greater vocabulary. It offers us a greater vocabulary. So, okay. So therefore, in the modern day science, many scientists are talking about that, rather than not choosing a particular kind of an operator, rather than seeing everything from the perspective of, say, mass or energy, rather than speaking about it, let's start speaking about the reality of this world in terms of information, in terms of knowledge, in terms of something which is something which is closer to counting experience. Something which is closer to counting experience. Yes, we can understand modern day approach to science is shallow because the science is only fluffing in effects, as we were talking about before. Is there any operator in science about a cause? C. There is no such operator like that. The operator is only in terms of effect. So we can say okay, S is ut plus half at square. But when we say that, S is not just ut plus half at square. If a ball is coming and suppose the ball is being hit, it is not ut plus half at square. Suppose if the ball comes and hits our head when we happen to come out of our door, and it hits on the head, then it is not just ut plus half at square. There is a lot of subjective experience which it has, and that experience is not accounted in any formula. So now, to account for this subjective reality, which is the very essence of our lives, and which is the very essence of our day-to-day lives. Now, to account for the subjectivity and experience, scientists are actually therefore thinking that let's not, make some objective operators like mass and energy and so on, but let's talk about something which is a little more subjective, which can really explain reality in a more holistic perspective. And that's information. And therefore, many scientists, theologians are coming to talk about this particular drift, this particular change. It's information, it's knowledge, it's information. That okay, it's not just a property is not just one standalone operator, but it is a holistic information. It's it's a holistic information exchange which is happening between particles. So in that way, many scientists are also talking about thinking, are also talking about and are also challenging and discussing about the methodology of how we approach about solving a problem. They say that okay, modern day science has always been in a very from a very objective perspective, but in an objective perspective, the basic underlying principle is that you take yourself out of the reality, and you are nowhere in the reality, and then you take yourself out and you are very objectively measuring, so everything appears cold, everything appears hard, everything appears very dry. But life is never like that. We are very much the part of the reality which we want to measure. So many scientists are talking about that this kind of objective approach to understanding may not work, but what may work is a participatory approach to reality. That yes, we are a part of what we are trying to measure, what we are trying to manipulate affects us. No, and so nothing is in isolation. Everything is interconnected. Nothing is in isolation. It's not that I can think anything, feel anything in my personal life, my professional life different, my personal life different. Everything is interconnected. The person says, okay, so what? If I am materially successful, if I okay, my character may be here and there, but if I am successful materially, so what? The point is, everything is interconnected. If there is disturbance here, there will be disturbance everywhere. Just like uh, just like an exploding volcano will create so if there is volcanic outburst inside, the heart and mind and senses are not controlled, the mind and senses are raging, then there will be explosion, one will see everywhere. So it's about so therefore this knowledge. And we see that now when we look at Shastras, the Vedic texts are talking about this Divya how to. So the Vedic texts are talking that okay, you don't try to change the world, you change your perception, how you want to how you see the world. If your instrument is faulty, you're going to always get a faulty observation. So change your heart, change your instrument. And that's where the Gita is talking about that from modes of ignorance and passion rise to goodness. That's where the Vedic Shastras are talking about that actually see everything in relationship to God. Then you can see everything in a very large scale alphabet. And then you can so that accounts for so that knowledge increases your perception. And when your perception is increased, then you can actually it makes the unpalatable things or even seeming suffering and miserable and agonizing situations digestible. That's the point. So therefore, it is this Divya it is this connectivity with God which can actually enhance our digestion of can make these uncertain situations of this world digestible. It is actually the way to develop resilience towards the provocations, towards the ups and downs, the crests and troughs, which shatter anyone and everyone. Actually, in this way, we can see our complete life is tuned for God. When we add God, everything starts falling in place, just like bits and pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. It may look random, look uncertain. When we add God, then we are actually adding a vision which is unifying everything. When everything fits into picture, it becomes a complete whole meaningful picture. That's what happens when we add God in every aspect, in every fabric of our lives. Let's stop here. Thank you very much. So we open the floor for question answers. I again apologize once again for our sound problems. Again apologize for our sound problems at the beginning of the session, and we'll try to work upon it more for our future sessions. So do you have any questions? We can take a few questions if you have. So next Saturday we are going to discuss on a very interesting theme of the science of cognition. How do we the science of cognition? How do we get knowledge about anything? So this science is a very interesting science. Technically, it is called as epistemology, and through this understanding of the comparative ways of cognition, of the science of cognition, we we're going to understand, uh, you know, where does where is the fallacy in a materialistic approach, and how can a spiritual approach, an approach of imbibing the knowledge from the Shastras, uh, uh, can make our understanding of knowledge much more complete. So next session on epistemology. Uh, yeah, questions. Okay, so electron theory, where it is mentioned. In which site? Okay, so yes, so if you want to study about quantum mechanics, many world universities offer introductory courses on quantum mechanics. You can hear them. It may be there in NPTEL as well, NPTEL as well. Uh, it may be there in NPTEL as well. So yeah, so the lesson. I mean, it's interesting to study matter. Therefore, actually, many people actually devote their lives to the study of nature, actually to the study of matter, because matter is so amazing. It behaves in such amazing ways, actually, and nature is so amazing. So many people dedicate their lives to the study of nature, actually. So yes, it's quite amazing, and if you and it is going to be much more amazing when we study them in connection with God. So how matter and nature reflect the divinity of God. From that perspective, we study things, and it becomes even more exciting, superlative exciting. So, so yes, you can study some introductory courses on quantum mechanics on websites, and then you can study Bhagavad Gita. That will give you how to relate with material energy with its connection to divinity. Any other questions? Okay, there was a question asked in between about that doesn't mean that the electrons are influenced by other electrons instead of a two. Yes, electrons are going to get influenced by other electrons. That is also one of the control parameters, but that does not negate. I mean, that's another control parameter. But again, in multibody and subatomic particles or multibody electron systems, also the tool is the tool is an objective operator. So yes, cumulatively also they come to certain norms how they behave, but those norms are also now in a superposed state. So the operator is like an objective. The operator is like asking an objective question, whether to a single electron or to a multiple group of electrons, and either say yes or say no. So that's how from a matrix mechanics or linear algebra point of view, an operator is a matrix or a transformation matrix, and that's exactly what the effect what it creates is like asking an objective question. But state is a deeper phenomenon. It's not just an objective answer. That's what we wanted to point out. That's what we wanted to point out. Okay, so I thank you all very much. You can reflect upon this and you can reflect about the discussion today, and in case you come up with questions, you can post us